Okay, so for this week's reading review, I decided to go over the Unit 3 readings regarding women's health because I thought those were really interesting and we didn't get to talk like a ton about all of it. But basically, talked about how a lot of women aren't believed in a medical environment, and it mainly focused on women in the US, and it looked at heart disease specifically and how we still don't have a clear reference as to what a heart attack looks like in a woman compared to a man, and how like a lot of our medical system was built up on male participants in studies, or like even medical models for like surgeries and procedures and stuff. So it's all built upon a man. So therefore, women are kind of left to figure out the differences in their medical treatments and stuff. So for an additional source, I thought it would be interesting to see what I could find about women's healthcare in another country instead of the US, because I think like, at least right now, modern day, we're all like, oh, our healthcare sucks, we need new healthcare, whatever. So I thought I would see if it was more of like a US specific issue or what. So I found a BBC article called "Doctors Dismiss These Women as Hysterical, Now They're Fighting Back." And it's all women in Australia telling their stories about how they either like did not get proper consent for things, felt ignored, felt like they were seen as hysterical. So it starts with, it wasn't saying goodbye to her husband and newborn before being wheeled into an operating theater or the heart attack she thought she was having as they lay there on the table. It was when a male obstetrician ripped the placenta out of her body without word or warning. She's saying that's her defining moment of her second birth. And this woman was actually a nurse, and she said like she knew it was necessary for them to take out her placenta, right? But she said she hadn't seen or met this man before, and she couldn't get past the fact that her consent during one of the most traumatic experiences in her life felt so little. She said it was pretty violating and like took what could be a really great moment in her life to feel kind of gross, and like she wasn't heard or thought of in that moment. It says, Metcalf is one of thousands of Australian women who have come forward to tell their stories after the federal government assembled a team of experts to tackle what it calls medical misogyny. So I think it's interesting because this is obviously an issue in the US, and like in our terms we call it a gender gap for this, like gender data gap for this unit, but we haven't really done much about it. There's not like policy in place for this. Whereas here in Australia, they put together a team to study like just this and figure out like what's happening and why. So it says, so far they've uncovered that a staggering 2/3 of females nationwide have encountered gender bias or discrimination in healthcare, which is pretty equivalent to what was happening in the US. And it tells a lot of stories of women just not feeling listened to, blamed for their issues, them getting dismissed in bad situations because they were stressed, or they were told that they were stressed or anxious. Like there was one woman who was really fatigued and went to the doctor, and they just blamed everything on stress, that because she was a mom and had a lot of kids, whatever. But she was misdiagnosed a bunch of times, and then after still continuing to go back and fight it, she found out she had thyroid cancer. So it's another one of those examples of like how women really have to stick up for themselves in medicine, and that's not just something that happens here, it happens everywhere, or at least also in Australia. So I thought it was really interesting to look into all of that. Like, it was a lot of similarities between the US and Australia, with them saying it was, they got things blamed on their mental health, or they didn't get listened to. One woman said that she took her husband with her to the doctor every time she went because she knew that she wouldn't be listened to unless she brought him along, and it actually did make a difference to her. And she said, I just don't feel safe engaging with the system, because when you're young and you're told over and over that something is all in your head, it's easy to believe. So yeah, it's still pretty, it's very similar to things like the heart disease reading that we had. Like, page 133 of that one, it says, here finally were these mythical hysterical females coming into the ER, the millions of mostly women patients who have heart disease and all its symptoms, but have for decades been told that they do not, because we learned that the testing we do for heart attacks or heart disease is not adequate for a female body compared to a male. So we're learning that we need to figure out better solutions to how we test stuff like this. As far as the main ingredients of the medical controversies within this, there's obviously a large form of sexism there that comes into play, because it's very much, you're a woman, so we don't believe you. I think there's also a sense of, I can't think of the word right now, but where doctors are higher up in a hierarchy and they think they know best. So rather than be wrong and admit, oh, let's do these tests to help you figure out what's actually wrong, if they don't know the answer, they'd rather just blame it on mental health or stress or whatever, instead of actually listening. As far as consequences and implications, obviously, as a community, it hurts women a lot. I think one of the readings talked about how women are 2 times as likely to die from, I think it was heart disease, because we've just ignored their existence in medicine for so long. So there's obvious implications of more women are dying from these diseases that should be researched and looked into. And there's also while men have a longer life expectancy, women have women have a longer life expectancy, women also have chronic illness longer in their life. So there's a difference in quality of life there based on quality versus quantity. And I think we value women's quality of life as a system a little bit less than men, and we're just now figuring that out and trying to fix it. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of consequences within that. Another one of the ingredients, I think, was definitely lack of informed consent, because in the Australian article, the woman said they just ripped her placenta out. They didn't say hey, we're doing this right now for this. It's not even a question of asking, because it was a measure that had to be taken place in that procedure, but just saying, hey, this is what we're doing as we're doing it, instead of just doing things without being told. I think a lot of women are scared to go to the doctor or scared to get help because they don't know what's wrong, but they also don't think that people will listen to them. So yeah, there's a lot of messy things that go into that, but that is my reading review for the week.